There are so many variables involved when evaluating the skill of a basketball player. And at each level, these variables can change. They can hold more weight, they can hold less weight. But what makes somebody good at basketball? Recently, I've had discussions about the hierarchy of various basketball players, about where they stand on all-time caliber lists and whatnot. And there are takes out there that I just simply can't comprehend. A lot of times in any given argument, though I disagree with one of my guests, and I often do, I can wrap my head around how they have come to that conclusion and understand their side of the argument, though I don't necessarily agree with it. But recently I've had some things said in which, or some things that I've heard in which I can't perceive how someone can conceive and formulate an opinion like that. It just does. The train of thought that they took to get to their ultimate conclusion does not make sense to me. I cannot comprehend how that happened. Right now, I don't really think it's necessary to talk about the hierarchy of basketball's greats. I will explain, though, my perception on what makes a player, quote unquote, good at basketball. We see it, we hear it all the time. You'll be at the park, you'll be at the gym, maybe playing pickup. You'll be seeing somebody play and you'll think to yourself, or maybe you say to a friend you're with, wow, that guy is good at basketball, or damn, she's good at basketball. But where does this belief stem from? What do we see that makes us think they are good at basketball? What information do we process to formulate the conclusion that this person is good at basketball? On a very basic level of basketball, like in pickup games, like at the gym or in the park, like I was saying, we don't track stats. And we certainly don't track analytics. Maybe if you're playing and you're like me and you're not really that good at basketball, maybe you're playing pickup and you are counting your stats. But nobody else really cares about your stats, and you'll probably forget about your own stats by the end of the day. So in this case, we rely solely on the eye test. So I've played on school teams before, but never at a high level of basketball. I'm not, by any stretch of the imagination, a good basketball player. I just, enjoy the game. I play here and there and whatnot. But, I could see people who were talented at basketball, and I could definitely understand that somebody was good at basketball. Up over the last, I'd say, 3, maybe 4 years. That's where I got my true appreciation for basketball. But even before that, I could see something I could understand when somebody was talented at the sport of basketball. So like I said, it relies solely on eye test. The ability to dribble, to ball handle, to shoot, to make your jump shots, contested jump shots, to hit, even at the lowest of levels, hit your layups on a consistent basis. Never ever miss your layups. And for a lot of people, as you progress through the levels of basketball talent, right from the bottom, hitting a layup is impressive. But then you move your way up. You never miss your layups. You're hitting your layups with both hands consistently. You're never missing any layups. Just on and on, hitting jump shots, hitting mid ranges, beating somebody off the dribble, getting in the post, hitting threes. There's so many things involved. But let's not backtrack all the way to the absolute basement of basketball talent. Let's move up a little bit on the scale. So when I'm seeing in the gym, I'm seeing a guy, taking people off the dribble and hitting their shots. That's when I can understand somebody is good at basketball. When they're on the court creating their own shot, making shots, and the consistently off of their open shots. But I'm more interested in, on the preliminary basis of creating your own shot and hitting a shot if it's contested. Making plays happen for yourself and not waiting for somebody else to make it happen for you, or not waiting for the opportunity to present itself for you. Grabbing the opportunity, making the opportunity. But then, I've seen a lot of good basketball players in school, and my school's not great at basketball, but, I've seen a lot of basketball players who, even though I think they're good, never progress beyond the elementary level. Let's say by the end of high school, they're done playing basketball at any competitive level. Best case, they're playing intramurals or they're playing men's league and whatnot, pick up here and there. What gets you to the collegiate level of basketball? And obviously there's different roles for different players. Some guys are just spot-up jump shooters. They sit in the corner, give them the ball, 33% of the time when they're wide open in that corner, it's going through the mesh. But I'd say that more importantly on the collegiate level, you're looking at guys who are consistently hitting those jump shots, who can take guys off the dribble consistently with a high level of effectiveness, high level of efficiency. But again, we're not really looking at, I don't think, just the statistics involved in scouting maybe from a high school level, at least not, if we're in Canada, we're talking about scouting Canada, because I do media work with university basketball in Canada. I've played high school. Even though my main sport is soccer, I still have a good understanding of what goes into scouting for basketball. If you're scouting at a high school game, you're probably not focused on these statistics available. And usually, a player goes in for a visit, maybe at a practice before he's signed. And in that scenario, you're just watching him play. You're not tallying down how many assists, how many rebounds, how many points he's getting, how many shots he put up. You're just looking at him. You can understand from the eye test that this player is good and he fits in with your team because he doesn't look out of place playing with the guys on your current team when he makes the visit. When you see him in high school, he is a tick above everybody else, at least a tick above everybody else on the court. You can see the overwhelming talent that this guy has. But again, the perception is the ability to perform in that scenario. And, a lot of guys have the skill to hit jump shots, but about consistency, it's about efficiency. And you just sometimes it's a bit of a subconscious effect that a player can have when you look at them. You don't really understand what it is that makes them, what that separates them from the rest of the pack. But it's glaringly there. But you don't really understand, you can't really contextualize and can't really define what it is some of the time. Sometimes their process of thinking on what to do is just so much quicker than everybody else. I'm a firm believer that sports are split seconds. So if I can develop 1/10 of a second extra for space to get my jump shot on a step back or off a dribble, that is a lot more time than it sounds like, just at 1/10 of a second. That extra little bit of time can unlock so many other aspects to what your game is. If you can unlock that extra bit of time, that extra minuscule amount of time on a consistent level. I think that in the preliminary stages of developing your sport, it is the little things that can separate guys who progress to the next level and the guys who don't. And when you combine, it's not just 1/10 of a second. When you combine all these different things that create that 1/10 of a second, maybe you're getting half a second. Maybe the best guy is getting an extra second of time in certain plays because they can do so many different things to get all those little specks of time added to what they want to do. That is, for me, what separates from the preliminary stages of sport, which is, I'd say, through up until you're about 18 when you have to go to university for sports, if you are at that level. That is the separation. But it all comes from eye test. And you can see it getting the high quality performances so consistently because they are consistently executing those things that allow them that little bit of extra time to perform. When you get to the collegiate level, all of a sudden, I kind of talk about when, I don't know if this is the right example, but the way I can describe it is, if you have a really smart guy you went to high school with, just overwhelmingly smart, just shocked you, you were constantly mesmerized by the knowledge that this person had, the grades that they put up in high school. Then they get to a university setting, but when they've earned a place in a prestigious university, all of a sudden, they look around that school and they're average. The knowledge isn't separate like it was in high school. You're not at that tick above. You're at, wow, everybody's on my level of intellect. So you got to work even harder, and the real talent will showcase. The real knowledge will showcase. It's just like basketball. You can get to the collegiate level. All of a sudden, there are what, 15 other guys maybe on your roster that are just as good as you were. So now what develops the separation? Well, now you probably are tracking stats. The analytics behind it probably aren't present as of yet, but there's still enough of a gap in talent that it's more easily seen how good somebody is at basketball. And now that we're tracking stats on a more consistent basis, we can unlock, what the highest caliber players are. Because, like I said, I do media work for Ontario University Athletics in basketball, and I can see, when a player is showing out. But I'm not really focused on, I'm a commentator, so I'm not really focused on overall skill on the season. I'm usually watching, I'm doing my school every other home game, but then I only see the opposition team once. And I can see a guy who's balling out, and maybe I'll look up his stats later, and I go, okay, he's putting up good numbers. On rare occasions, the guy had uncharacteristically good game, but I can see in the game he was putting up numbers, he was playing well, he was making things happen, and I go look later, and the stats line up with how I saw him play, and that's usually the case. So again, it's about unlocking those extra seconds. So the guys that are even more talented at it, who maybe were creating a 1 extra second of time on a play in high school, are now creating half a second in university or college level. But that's more than guys, because maybe some other guys were creating half a second, now they're only creating tenth of a second. So these kind of guys are getting more time, and with the extra skill, the extra time, they can create the shots. Now, this is another big part when you get to guys who are now on your level. I think that the most important aspect of sports in terms of the performance, your output, the single most important thing is confidence. If you don't have confidence, you're never going to perform at a high level. Maybe you get hot, but confidence is everything. I mean, that's where the expression when a guy gets hot comes from. Because if you hit 2 shots in a row, all of a sudden you go, well, I'm hitting the next one. I'm on fire. Because you're confident you're going to hit the shot. If you're always worrying, when you break 2 shots in a row to start off a game, and you're kind of worried about shooting, but then the other team leaves you open, you get the ball on the perimeter, you're nervous about taking that shot. And it's probably, you're probably not going to hit it when you have that mentality going in. So confidence, the ability to execute. I mean, how many times have you seen, I'll compare it to soccer, that's what I know best. Guys who just lose their confidence, and all of a sudden just are not executing things to the degree that possible. And until they get that confidence reinstilled, if they ever do, they will never be the same player. I mean, look at Alexis Sanchez is the glaring one for me in soccer terms. Because how good he was for Arsenal, then he went to Man United, had a bit of a rough start, and he never recovered. The confidence never was reinstilled in Alexis Sanchez, and he never performed for Manchester United. It's like when you go to a new team. A lot of guys in the NBA, they go to a new team, a higher caliber team. I can't think of a specific example at this particular point, but they go to that new team. Their confidence kind of sets back because they're not top dog at this new team, and they can never find their feet. And they maybe don't ever find their feet again to the degree that they used to. So confidence is the biggest thing. The belief that you are going to succeed and hit the shot and make plays happen is the most important thing. That's why the really confident players are the ones that succeed the most when it comes to sports. Sometimes there's a bit of overconfidence, which turns into cockiness, which can also deteriorate your game. We've seen that in soccer through guys like Balotelli, guys like Nicholas Bendtner. Tremendous kids rolled at their feet when they were in late teens, early 20s, faded off early. Doesn't instill, but confidence, guys like like the Michael Jordans, like the LeBron Jameses, like the Kobe Bryants. The ability is matched by the confidence, maybe even exceeded by confidence, because they are such a belief in their ability to succeed that they knew they were going to succeed. That is the separation. But going back to it, the collegiate level, the guys who can create those extra bit of time per play, those are the guys succeeding. And you can see it because they're getting it on a consistent basis, and it's making it hard for their adversary to defend them. Tough to guard those kind of guys who are making that extra bit of time. And then the best ones, like I was saying before, you go from a second of time extra to half a second. Well, now you're adjusting to the collegiate level. So maybe you can bring that back up to the extra second. Maybe you can't. But some guys excel at that level. They can see the level and they can rise to that level. The best players can rise up to the level that they're playing at. Instead of steeping down to that level, they rise above it and they meet the level, then eventually overcome that level and exceed it. Those are the guys that can progress beyond the collegiate level. And every little, checkpoint, let's say, in the levels of basketball, we have to get more nitpicky about what makes a player good. What makes a player good at basketball? What makes you good enough for the NBA? Because, we've all seen these guys balling out, in NCAA. Don't get drafted. Never make the NBA. Maybe get drafted but never play in the NBA. And you think, wow, I thought this guy was incredible, but why, if you don't have the full understanding, why is he not in the NBA if he's so good? Well, sometimes maybe the competition wasn't there. So they weren't so overwhelmingly better than everybody else because the competition wasn't good that, maybe no team wanted to take a chance on them. Or maybe it's just those little margins that separate people. And we can see it in some that we can't see it in others. Because, you can watch two people play and there's disagreements. But you can, especially at the university level, you can decide which one is going to be better. Which one should go higher. That's what, all the scouting's for. Obviously, there's differences in opinions. But a lot of it is down to eye test. When it's at that stage. Still on eye test, but now we're looking at stats as well. Now we're looking at a little bit of analytics. We're looking at stats, I think, in this, in the collegiate setting. When it gets to the NBA level, we have to get even more nitpicky. It becomes eye test, it becomes stats, it becomes analytics, it's everything. All of it conjoined together, all of it coagulated into one set thing, defining how good that player is. And it's not just one thing at the NBA level, because we see, eye test. This guy looks really good, but then you look at stats. Oh, he's inefficient. He's taking away touches from other people. His PER isn't great. Maybe his plus minus isn't great. Well, why is he putting up numbers, but the plus minus sucks? Well, maybe because he's taking away so many touches from people. Maybe he's not good on defense. Now you have to start looking at various things all together. And when you're comparing guys who are so similar in terms of output, then you have to look, okay, well, when this guy's on the floor, his team is much better than when this guy's on the floor. So let's look at biggest example we've recently talked about is Luka Doncic versus Trae Young. You lay out their stats, the big stats, the points per game, the assists, the rebounds, shooting percentages, all that. Let's say you blindly tested on those things. You go, well, okay, they're pretty similar. I don't have them up right now, but they're pretty similar. You could argue from those stats which one is better, which one is worse. You might take Luka Doncic, but honestly, you can look up those stats right now. Those are some similar stats. Guys taken third and fifth in their perspective in their draft. They were both drafted in the same year. But then you look at the records those teams possess, how the Mavericks are doing so much better than the Hawks in a tougher conference. Then you can look at the rosters that they both have. I could lay out to you the entire Dallas Mavericks roster and the entire Atlanta Hawks roster. And honestly, you would probably wager the Atlanta Hawks have a better overall roster than the Dallas Mavericks, but why are they performing so admirably compared to the Hawks? Why are the Mavericks playing so well? Because when Luka Doncic is on the court, he elevates everybody else to a new level. It's something unparalleled that LeBron does. Nobody does it or has ever done it as good as LeBron has in elevating his teammates to a new level. Like we've seen with the Lakers this year, how good they are on defense. I know a lot of it's on Anthony Davis, but every single player on that roster, or almost every single player, has a better defensive rating, much better defensive rating this year than last season. Because guys like LeBron are stepping up on defense, and now he's making it known everybody's got to do the same. So he's elevating everybody else. That's what Luka Doncic is doing. That's why I make the comparison between Luka Doncic and LeBron James all the time. I see that in Luka Doncic, the ability to elevate his teammates to his degree of, or to a higher degree of talent. So now we're getting into a lot of other aspects that are much more important in nitpicking a good basketball player. Because, I mean, look at the NBA. There are only good basketball players in the NBA. Because I'm sure we've all seen great, fantastic basketball players in university or even in high school that never get to the next level. But we're like, wow, these guys are the best basketball player I've ever seen, best player I've ever played with. They don't get anywhere. But the NBA, we're calling guys scrubs. Everybody in the NBA is a good basketball player. But now we need to see, the basis for comparison is now only solely NBA. So now we're starting to say, this guy's good, no, this guy's not good. Guys who are not getting many minutes, guys who are not putting up good stats. Because now we're comparing on an NBA level. But that's where I'm going to just kind of distinct why I'm saying good or bad for NBA. Because everybody in the NBA is a good player. But now if we're only comparing to NBA, just solely NBA players, what makes the good player? I believe you have to analyze stats. I think you have to analyze a little bit of eye tests. I think you need to analyze analytics. I think all of them are the same. I said a little bit of eye test. It's all, I think, maybe not equal value, maybe a little bit less on analytics. But the analytics are there for a reason, and you got to take control of them. Like, you got to pay attention to analytics. Because the analytics, and I will have a video on this soon, I keep saying that, but I will have to make a video on the death of the mid-range shot. And why analytics teams are saying to stay away from them. And maybe I'm part of the younger demographic that has full belief in the analytics. A lot of older cats don't really believe in the analytics side, and they think, okay, look, you can see this guy's a baller, like, okay, but if they're putting up, let's say, 21, 22 points per game, but they're taking away all these touches and shooting so often and not shooting efficiently, and another guy is getting up the same amount of points per game, but he's shooting the ball way less, he's touching the ball way less, well, why is that guy performing so much better? But you're watching them. Okay, they're both putting up the same, similar stats. They're both creating their own shots. You look at the stats, similar stats. But then you look deeper and you go, okay, well, this guy is clearly better because his plus minus is better. He's way more efficient. He takes way less touches. He gets his team more involved. He can work with the offense better than the other player. That is why analytics are so important, because when you have guys who are close in terms of output, in terms of eye tests, when I get the analytics side, you go, wow, all of a sudden, the light at the end of the tunnel, you can understand which one is better and which one isn't. That's what separates the good players from the worst players, because those little things, it's all little things conjoined. Like, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. If I were to ever coach any sport, I'd be a perfectionist in this regard, because it's those minute details. It's the nuances between different players that separates the best and the just good. It's the nuances. It's the tiniest things, but all those tiny, seemingly insignificant things, when they're all multiplied to such a magnitude, creates such a separation. Like I was saying before, if I can create 1/10 of a second 10 times in one play based off my movements, I have an extra second of time compared to a guy who only does one thing. He has 1/10 of a second. That is a huge amount of time in sports. 1 second, try running 100 meters 1 second faster than somebody else and look at the difference in times. If you're running a 100-meter sprint, 1 second is huge. huge margin of victory in something like that. And I know we're not talking 100 meters for him, but those little things really matter. You get that extra space, all of a sudden you can unlock a lot of abilities in your game. So it is the nuances. That's why analytics are important. On the grand scope, if the lower levels, eye test can do it. And at the collegiate level, stats can do it, but analytics are a part of it too, because now you can really understand who can progress to the NBA level. And you have to understand in all these things together create NBA players. And when they get to the NBA, it's all these little things to the little details that make you even better. Guys like, I remember the start of the season, the Chicago Bulls analytics team was talking to Zach LaVine, who puts up, 24 points per game? They were talking to him. By the way, I hope Zach LaVine turns out to be an all-star. They were talking to him and saying, you got to stop shooting mid-range shots. And he was saying, well, he went to the media and said, if you're a good basketball player, you can create what you think are good shots. But the analytics make sense. Like I've said this on this podcast before, you shoot the ball, you hit 40% of your mid-range shots. League average over the last 10 years is probably a little less. But, let's say on a good year, you're shooting 40% from mid-range, 35% from three. That's the league average over the last decade. Take 100 shots from those. Hit 40 mid-ranges, hit 35 threes. Do the math. Okay? I get 40 mid-range shots out of 100. That's 80 points. But then you look at the three-point. I only hit 35% compared to 40%. But there was three. Now I get 105 points compared to 80 points. That's those little things that can shape up a game. Get to the paint. Get to the hole. Hit your shots. Get to the perimeter. Hit your threes. Try to stay away from mid-range. If you have to and if you're wide open, sure. But don't go trying to play that hero ball hitting deep mid-ranges. It just irks me watching people shoot the deep mid-range contested, right? Like in the NBA, just look, there's better shots available. You know what I mean? Like, seeing people miss those, like, those contested elbow J's. It doesn't make sense. If you're open, you get a guy in a pump, all of a sudden you're open. Yeah, that's a good shot, but why are you trying to shoot in the guy's face from there? You can find somebody more open. You can even get yourself closer to the rim. There's no need to shoot that deep mid-range shot, close to the perimeter, but not a three. That's why, there's the little things. That's why the analytics are here. That's why there's every basketball team has a team of people working on analytics to understand, the game. To the naked eye, we don't perceive and think about these things. But when you go deeper into sports, you get the little things that separate the good from the guys who are not good. And that is what makes a good basketball player. Thank you for listening to the Amateur Hour Sports Podcast. We do post every single day, by the way. We've had some new visitors in the last couple days. Post every single day. If you want to stay up to date with episodes, follow us Twitter and Instagram at AmateurPDC. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And as usual, we will see you tomorrow.